Man, it sucks getting off for a whole well, I guess it was a total of over. Hold on, 1, 2, 7, almost 9 days off in a row, and yeah, man, that first day back was not a good time, man. It was a bit rough, man.
Yeah, no, yeah, because the thing is, you are off for so many days, and you get used to this way of being that's you're getting comfortable with, and after no matter how long you've been at work, whether it's 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, by the time you get back to work after a long vacation, it's basically like you have to go back to the start.
I am so proud of you, man. Welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way that we measure that distinction is we go from Ukraine to Uganda, but we take that long way around. This specific podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I am the one who is not taking anybody's crap today, Ryan Jamalathu Kearns.
And I am the one, the only, the my middle name is not Jatholomew, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you who don't know what Hey, Listen to This is, it's right there in the title. Every week, me and Ryan look at each other and ask the question, or say the statement rather, hey, listen to this. Although I guess it could be a question. It's like, hey, listen to this? Because the albums we talk about here on the show, music albums, range in variety from old to new, range different types of genres, different types of styles, and as we've been finding out rather recently, different types of quality. So that being said, what album and how qualified, for lack of a better transition there, did we talk about last week, Ryan?
So, the album that we talked about last week was the 1970 album released by Black Sabbath entitled Paranoid. And for those of you who aren't aware of that album, okay, well, I suppose that's interesting. But on the flip side, it's one of their most iconic works. I mean, I would say it is their most iconic album out of their whole discography. I know there's a couple albums that come close in quality, but literally almost half the album is classic iconic songs for a reason. And the reason why we, review that album is to pay tribute to the late, great Ozzy Osbourne, who passed away a few weeks back. And yeah, I'm not going to spoil so much of that review, but needless to say, myself, I was very surprised with how much I enjoyed that album.
Yeah, I was a thorough enjoyer of that album as well. Again, it is an album that has held the test of time for many reasons, but like you say, no reason to spoil that here.
So that being said, we are going from Black Sabbath this week from 1970 to what? What did we talk about this week, Matt?
Well, I thought about it on the way home from work today, and it seems to me that we are going from the Prince of Darkness to the Princes of Lightness, because we are going to be discussing the band Coldplay this week, and their 2002 release entitled A Rush of Blood to the Head. Now, for those of you wondering what is a Coldplay, now more than ever, I envy you and your lack of understanding of modern pop culture. But for those who don't know what a Coldplay is, they are not divorce lawyers, no matter what the headlines say. They are, in fact, a rock band from London, England, consisting of vocalist slash pianist Chris Martin, guitarist Johnny Buckland, drummer and percussionist Will Champion, and bassist Guy Berryman. They formed in the mid 90s. And since you play this game with me, Ryan, I'll play this game with you. What was the name of Coldplay before they became Coldplay?
Oh my goodness. So I don't know this, so I'm just gonna come up with a fun name. I'm gonna come up with Chris Martin and the Funky Bunch.
If only. No. They had two names before they officially became Coldplay. And in 1997, they formed as the band called Big Fat Noises. And then a year later, decided to change their name to Starfish, preceding one Patrick Star by about a year. And then at some point, they became Coldplay. Why? It sounds like a very nice, proper name, I suppose, but Coldplay's sound stems from the 90s Britpop era that we were discussing a few weeks ago with the band Suede. And it wasn't just Suede, it was Oasis, it was Blur, it was Pulp. And Coldplay sort of emerged from that as one of the first and probably most successful of the post-Britpop bands. They debuted with their initial EP called Safety in 1998, following that up with Parachutes, their first full album in 2000. And for those of you who are unaware of that album, you're probably aware of their lead single from that album, their lead single as a band, entitled Yellow, because chances are, if it's not your best friend's favorite song or one of your best friend's favorite songs, it is one of their best friend's favorite songs. And that success led them on to the next album, which is the album we were talking about today, which is A Rush of Blood to the Head in 2002. And it became an even more successful album than Parachutes, based off of some of the singles that we're going to be talking about, such as Clocks, In My Place, God Put a Smile Upon Your Face, The Scientist, etc. Now, before I get into my feelings or my experience with Coldplay as a band before this review, Ryan, I will throw that question over to you. What are your experiences with Coldplay up to this review?
So, my experiences with Coldplay, prior to this review, I got into the band mostly through their 2008 album, Viva La Vida or Death and All of His Friends. And I have fond memories of listening to that album when it came out alongside John Mayer's Continuum when, took a vacation up to Erie / Niagara Falls. And it was one of those, memory albums that I can specifically, recall a time and place where I was really just listening to it, hardcore. And, a bunch of those songs off of that album ended up becoming, huge singles for them. The title track, Viva La Vida, is, probably one of their most popular songs up until that point, and I would say even post that point, because post 2008 and later on in the back half of their catalog as it stands today, 2025, they've had a couple singles here or there that I've listened to once or twice or maybe three times and enjoyed, but it doesn't really stand up to the magnitude of Viva La Vida. And even after getting into that album specifically, I dove back into a little bit of the album that we're talking about today in Parachutes, but and X and Y, their album that came out in 2005. But more so, my experiences with checking out those specific albums have been equivalent to me checking out a band's back catalog once and never really diving back into it. Now, I never really had any, negative things to say about the band altogether. I know they kind of get a bad rap. I would almost equate the hate or the flack that they get and the mainstream consciousness as like almost being like the UK's version of Nickelback, with them being like the punching bag of all like the musical jokes that are out there nowadays. But overall, like I respect them as a group, but outside of the Viva La Vida or Death and All of His Friends album, I really haven't dove into any of their other records up until this point.
So for me, my experience with Coldplay is kind of similar to mine, and in a sense, your experience with Black Sabbath heading into last week, which is I kind of know them more through their big songs and their singles rather than their albums as a whole. Because a couple tracks off this album, particularly Clocks and In My Place, I listened to those whenever they came out as part of my brother's Now That's What I'll Call Music US collection, because In My Place is on Now 11, Clocks is on Now 13, and that was my first exposure to Coldplay. And then a couple albums down the line, it was Speed of Sound, Fix You, then Viva La Vida came out, and stuff like that. And that's kind of where I was at with Coldplay for the most part. Like, I did not hate them. I liked the songs that I heard. But I never really took that initiative to take that next step into listening to one of their albums front to back. And quite honestly, that has continued pretty much up until this year, when in January I finally decided to give Viva La Vida a full spin. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But aside from that, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot of experience with Coldplay. I mean, I do know that they have been critically acclaimed. I know this album, I think, was on the initial 500 greatest albums of all time list from Rolling Stone back in 2003, which is somewhat impressive considering it was released just a year prior, and everyone was like, nope, one of the 500 greatest of all time. That's as simple as that. So yeah, relatively minimal experience with Coldplay as an albums artist, more so as a singles artist on my end. But that did not stop me from deciding to pick Coldplay this week because, well, I had been listening to a whole lot of albums myself recently up until after I made the selection to do Coldplay this week. And, of course, Coldplay has garnered some notoriety lately for being the biggest group of divorce lawyers that we've seen this year, breaking up a couple whose patriarch I will not mention because he doesn't deserve it. So yeah, that's my background on Coldplay heading into this episode.
And I'm really excited to talk about Coldplay though, because it seems like both you and I haven't really dove headfirst into one of their albums up until this point, and they've always been a band that I've always been kind of curious. Do they deserve all the flack that they get? Like, I think it was in the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, where they made a joke that hasn't aged very gracefully, if I could just be a little blunt there, about like making fun of like somebody for listening to Coldplay. But yeah, I'm excited to dive headfirst into A Rush of Blood to the Head, if you are ready to do so, my good sir.
I am ready to do so, and I'll kick things off here with the opening track of 11, and that is the song called Politik, spelled with a K. And my first note on this song that I've written down is bang, 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 because that's how the song starts. Just the slashing, just straight eighth notes or quarter notes, depending on how they wrote it, to start the song, with the slashing guitars, the bass, and the piano, and then pulls back, and then it's just basically just Chris Martin and his piano. Which I did like that. I did like that sort of big bang and then drop back. And throughout the song, you get the band's sort of MO as far as their music, which is, Chris Martin singing very soulfully, but not necessarily very deeply. He doesn't have a very deep voice, but he has a very dialed back high voice that works well with this kind of music. Guitar sounds good. Piano stands out very well. The harmonies I thought were quite good. And it does sound musically like a good song. So why is this my least favorite song on the album? Well, my friend, my co-host, and dear listener, knowledge is a double-edged sword sometimes, and whenever you research something, it may affect your opinion about what you already know. And that is the case with this. Because before I even looked it up, I kind of thought, okay, these lyrics are kind of vague. They're very, we live in a society, the overture. Just a lot of, hey, things are happening in the world and I want things. I want feelings. Give me feelings and get some feelings of your own, damn it. And, that's fine. But then when I realized what this song stemmed from, I was not fine. Because, I don't know, I cannot speak for you, but I looked it up on Genius.com, as I do with lyrics sometimes, and I found out that this song was apparently inspired after the attacks of the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. And immediately I was like, okay, no. And I'm not saying that a response to 9/11 has to be pro-patriotic like Toby Keith's Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue. I'm not saying it has to be anti-government like Green Day's American Idiot. But for an event of that magnitude, it has to be something. It has to be something. This is not that. This is your response to 9/11? This is barely a response. To me, this is like if Chris Martin got up and started reading the newspaper and just found out about 9/11, and then all of a sudden said, "Oh, geez, what a shame, bummer. This is quite a tragedy." And then all of a sudden, he started singing that over and over and over again. It's like, bummer, what a tragedy, thoughts and prayers, and then invited everyone else to start singing along. That's what Politik is. And again, it sounds good musically, but its shallowness compared to the depth of the event that inspired it just immediately turned me off to the point where I was like, no, this is a problem. So yeah, despite good performances from the band, least favorite song on the album.
And for full disclosure, before I give my rebuttal about Politik here and how it's my favorite song off the album, what does a gamut? What's your gamut for this review looking like? Top 3, bottom 3 wise.
I have a. I'm just gonna be honest. I have a top 2 and I have a bottom 2. I was trying hard to get a third one, but I'll explain why I couldn't later on.
Okay, I would say I'd be curious to know if that's the first time we've ever had that in our show, where we've had a bottom 2 and a top 2. Yeah, it would be fun. For me, I only have a top 3, and I don't have a bottom anything.
Oh.
And much to the misdirect that I was laying out there for Politik here. Politik didn't land in my top 3, and a lot of the critiques that you had, I guess in some way subtly influenced the way I thought about this track here. Because yes, I did find out that this track here was a reaction to 9/11 and how this whole track is supposed to invoke the listener to wake up to have the to try to embrace and try to strive for a world of like peace and love. But yeah, one of the notes I specifically have here about this track is, you know, the chorus is solid. I feel like I want more from Martin on vocals because he just does this middle of the road alternative rock Spotify chill wave kind of like, vocal here. And for like I agree with you, like for a track that's supposed to be like a direct reaction to like, one of the like a significant tragedy that's happened in world history since the turn of the century here. Like, yeah, it seems like, almost like an apathetic approach, if I could be honest with you. Like, not that you need to go like full like Rage Against the Machine or anything like that. And then it's interesting that you mentioned like all the direct like, responses to 9/11 like you listed, which were like, Toby Keith, Green Day. I would like, fun fact for those of you who aren't aware, My Chemical Romance, the band itself, got birthed because of 9/11, and Gerard Way wanted to create something that meant something. So yeah, fun fact. One day we'll talk about My Chemical Romance, but today's not that day, and well, spoiler alert, next week is not that day either. So yeah, other things I got to say about politics that you didn't already cover. I mean, I'm right there with you. Like, I do enjoy the intro with like those big like, chugging chords and with the drop down into the dynamics. They execute that fairly well, and I would also say like one thing that you didn't highlight here specifically is that the piano that Martin's playing in the verses and like throughout the song, it adds a good element. Like, it adds a good haunting kind of element, and like considering like the subject material of the song, like I get what he was going for. So the piano playing is great. Maybe just a little bit more passion for Martin on vocals, and this track could have been instantly maybe like 5 to 10% better. And I will also say Chris Martin, and like it's not gonna be the first time I'm gonna mention this here in the review, but during the bridge, he gets pitchy, and if I'm not mistaken, it's when he's trying to go up in that falsetto and it doesn't land well on my ears. And like it may not be of any fault of Chris's here, because just in my ears, I always hate when singers try to go for that falsetto and it doesn't land, and it just seems like, completely inorganic. And I'm like, just sing like, sing the note straight. If you're gonna sing like a whole like, passage, do it in falsetto or sing it straight. If you go back and forth, it never works out well in my ears. And outside of like, those notes, like, I mean, I do appreciate how the outro rides the grooves established by the rocking chords that we heard, like, in the intro. And those chords make several occurrences throughout the track here. Like, I think the overall performances of the instrumentation was solid. Yeah, I think I'm right there with you in terms of like the other critiques. Like the lyrics are kind of run of the mill. The only thing that I will add is just the meaning of the word politic, and when I mean politic, the way that it's spelled within the title of the track, it's referring to the real reason for like political moves. So like, I don't know. Think about any like, maneuver by a world leader visiting another world leader within the past like, I would say like 25 years. There's always a ulterior motive behind it. Like, back in the day, Nixon visited China, and that was not to make friendly relations with China. It was more of a reaction to Americans' fear about communism spreading throughout the world. So, yeah. Uh, and I guess what Martin and the group were going for here is that, what's your politic? What's your real reason for like, doing stuff? And it's a little bit of a stretch of a meaning, but the track in its own sense isn't offending me enough to put it in a bottom track territory.
Yeah. No, I agree that Again, the performances on here are solid, but you kind of hit on it with the idea of needing a little bit more, needing a little bit more like passion, vocally, lyrically, in the piano, perhaps, because it is way too middle of the road. Again, even if I hadn't known this was about 9/11, the lyrics still would have come off as vague, because again, it just basically says we live in a society. And one last note I have about this particular track is that, for lack of a better term, chorus, where he's singing "Open Up Your Eyes," especially with the vagueness of the rest of the lyrics, not to mention the fact that it's 2025, but I won't put that much against him. Hearing someone say "open up your eyes" while also talking about vague, human elements screams a little too unpleasant libertarianism for me. Like the phrase "open up your eyes" is like you're just like a coin's throw away from "wake up, sheeple, it's me, truth." So I didn't particularly like that line, but again, it was 2002. I'm not gonna put that much on that. I just found it funny to be like, oh, he's saying "open up your eyes," and why is that? Because clearly the rest of the song is not opening up much of anything else. So I am good on Politik, if you are, and we can move on to the next track, the first single off of A Rush of Blood to the Head, which is In My Place.
So, In My Place is a really cool song. Overall, like the intro with the guitar line. I'm not gonna say like that's gonna be the main highlight of the whole track here, but it sets the mood, it sets the flow, it sets the groove pretty appropriately, and it's a good guitar lick, and it works really well throughout the whole track. The chorus in the track here is really good. I like the overall flow of it, and like the way that Chris sounds. Like it's good enough on the ears, and the execution is done pretty well. And on top of Chris's vocals, the backing vocals in the chorus add a nice touch as well. And I feel like the overall descriptor that I can use for In My Place, it's a nice song. Like the guitar work during the verses is really good. I thought that was executed pretty well. The bridge in the track here is solid, but nothing really to write home about. But it gets the job done. It's an effective bridge, unlike other bridges that are found within the album here. And just on the lyrical front, the song speaks of the inevitable, unchangeable characteristics present in all humans, and it's an interesting stance to take, and maybe Chris is coming at it from the standpoint of like, hey, we're all human, and this is something that I try to change about myself, and just trying to fall back on the excuse of like, hey, I can't change, this is who I am, so you got to deal with it. Yeah, how long must you wait for it? How long must you pay for it? How long must you wait for it? And I think he might be going at that viewpoint from a self-deprecating standpoint, and if that's the case, it's done pretty effectively. I like the contrast in tone versus lyrical content, because the tone is pretty peaceful and it's pretty nice, but the lyrical content is kind of like, hey, how long must you pay for how much of a butthead that I am? So I think that's the main thing that I enjoyed about the track, other than the guitar lick, because again, the guitar work is done pretty well. And yeah, the only other thing I gotta mention about In My Place, honestly, is about the lyrical front of it, and how this song here directly relates to the whole concept of the album that we're talking about. And so this whole song is talking about the mental state that the singer is in, and all of his impulsive behaviors, his insecurities, and the lack of his emotional intelligence in those characteristics that he has. And in this song here specifically, he's asking his significant other to understand him and the place that he's in, because he feels lost. And I guess I can kind of get that vibe throughout the whole song here. And it's a decent vibe. I mean, again, like it's a very nice song, but I, I don't know. Like I feel like again, I want more from Chris in a song like this. Not that he needs to belt it out like I don't know, like Adele or like some powerful vocalist, but it's a nice song, man.
So for me, In My Place definitely changes things from Politic. First of all, you get those drums from Will Champion, which sort of harken to a song called When the Levee Breaks from Led Zeppelin. I was reminded very much of that beat right away. It's a very heavy beat, that boom, doom, boom, 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 doom. And then you get that guitar, which, like you said, is magnificent. Just this very oceanic, majestic presence that it has, which does counter the drums very well, because the drums are very heavy, but then you have that sort of nice lilting guitar that almost sounds classical in its presence. So it really just creates this nice, beautiful way to start the song. And then you get to the structure of the song, which, like you say, the chorus is very good. It rises like a good chorus should. The bridge towards the end just kind of almost feels like a post-chorus in a sense, because it dives back into the chords. Then it goes into this final bit before the last part, which is sort of an outro that contains the first part of the first verse. And I thought it all sounds very good. As far as your critique of Martin being, needing a little bit more, I don't completely disagree, but I think in this context it works a little better. Because lyrically, we're still being very vague, but the lyrics are, despite being vague, decidedly more personal. Like, he's no longer talking about big things, like, the reaction to 9/11 or the reaction to the state of the world. Like, no, he's talking about himself, and he's talking about his own personal feelings. And when discussing your feelings, it's okay to be vague sometimes, because sometimes you don't know what to say. Sometimes you're confused. Sometimes you're just like, how long do you have to wait for me to be better? Or how long do you have to wait for everything to be better? And the way that his sort of lilting, sort of soft vocals contrast with the hard band, I think is really nice. And I'm just going to come out and say it. This has, for a long time, been my favorite Coldplay song, and that is not changing today. We have gone full the whole way around, like you would say in the intro, the long way, from my least favorite song with Politik to my favorite song on the album, Within My Place.
Oh man, that's very interesting, and I'm curious to see if your second favorite song is my first favorite song. But when we get to that specific song, we will get to that song. I mean, I could respect it quite a bit. It's definitely a highlight off the album for me, and I think the reason why my favorite songs off the album are what they are is I like what Chris brings to the table. His voice completes everything, as opposed to how it lacks certain things. But without any further ado, are you okay if we just shimmy on over to figure out why God put a smile upon your face?
Yes, God put a smile upon your face. And I will say, out of all of the big songs to come off of A Rush of Blood to the Head, this is the one I was least familiar with heading into this review. Like, I knew about In My Place, The Scientists and Clocks, not so much this one. And I was a little surprised to hear the opening to this track, which was very grungy, had a very, like, almost distorted, like, I just picked this acoustic guitar up from a thrift store and now I'm going to tell you my feelings type of vibe, which isn't a bad thing. I dug it. And with that grungy, gruff start, you get lyrics that are still vague from the Coldplay Department of Vagueness, but also kind of snarky, because much like the last song, there is a bit of a hint that this might be a very personal album, and a lot of these songs deal with the subject of breaking up with someone. In My Place sort of hinted at it. Here you get a bit more concrete evidence that that's the case, because Chris is basically saying, listen, I got grace, I'm going to have style, God's going to put a smile upon my face, he's going to put a smile upon your face, and we'll see whose is better in the long run, because we got to get through this somehow. We're going to be on this. This is almost like if you're talking about the 5 stages of grief, this is bordering on full-on denial. Basically, him saying, no. Things are going to be all right. This is going to be okay. While decidedly being, a mix of confident and sorrowful at the same time. Again, the lyrics aren't completely specific. It doesn't name names, not that it has to. But it does seem very almost both sidesy, which I know both sides is more of a political thing, but in regards to a breakup, it feels like that's what he's going with here. I did enjoy this song, not enough to consider it a top song, but I was like, yeah, this is pretty good. I like Coldplay sounding a little darker than what we come to expect from them.
So, I'm going to start my discussion about God Put a Smile Upon Your Face by maybe just adding more context to the lyrics here, because the way I walked away from the song and how the song was supposed to come across, I believe that the lyrics are about Chris, questioning the whole existence of like the meaning of life and how we're supposed to live it, and whether we anybody knows what's really going on. And yes, in this specific circumstance, there's a significant other involved here, but I do believe the whole context of the song is just basically saying, hey, if you take a look at the first verse, the whole song begins where do we go? Nobody knows. I've got to say, I'm on my way down. He's basically saying he's on his way down to hell. And I agree with you that some of the lyrics here are really, really snarky, especially with the in the chorus, which I absolutely love. And the chorus reads, when you work it out, I'm worse than you. Yeah, when you work it out, I wanted to. And that's basically Chris defiantly saying, hey, yeah, when you work it out based on the parameters of the religion that you believe in, and what other people may believe in, I'm worse than you. But guess what? That's how I wanted it to turn out. That's how I wanted to live. That's how I want to live my life. And I thought, ooh, man, that's a spicy line to drop, and I did like that. So yeah, the lyrics are a little bit cryptic, but once you at least on my end, once I was able to connect the dots and able to add the religious element to it, it unlocked a whole new degree of appreciation for the song. And the lyrics are complemented so well by Chris's delivery, especially in the verses. He's not going up for a sweet, serene kind of delivery. He's down in the grungy elements that you described, and how snarky, and how I don't know, for lack of a better descriptor, how sassy he sounds. He executes that so well. The guitar being as dissonant as it is complements that so well. And also another element that I'm going to add compliments to is the bass work after that first section is super solid. It's so great. I think it's the best work that I hear from the bass individually off the whole album. So shout out to the bass player there. And yeah, a whole lot of I don't really have too much else to say about the track. The bridge section is really good. The repetition of the phrase "as good as man," and the repetition as the repetition of the phrase "as good as mine," how it gets repeated over and over again in that bridge is really, really good. It becomes really hypnotic for the listener. And yeah, uh, I have not much else to say other than the fact that yeah, we've arrived at one of my favorite tracks off the whole LP, and "God Put a Smile Upon Your Face" is number 2 in my ranking.
Understandable, understandable. This is a song I would very easily put in the good song bucket, and that became a problem for me throughout this entire review. Is that there are several qualifiers for it, but they're I'll get to it. I'll get to it, but yeah, no, this didn't quite lift it up enough to get my top three. In fact, I'd almost say that thinking about how you're saying with the lyrics being as they are, that this is the first time I would say maybe if he's going this snarky and sassy, maybe just a little bit more passion involved with him. Not that he does a bad job; he sounds very fine on this track, but it definitely to me falls in that category of he's singing like Chris Martin of Coldplay because he is in fact Chris Martin of Coldplay. But I completely respect that this is your second favorite song on the album. Didn't quite get there for me, but if you are cool with it, I am ready to move on to the next track, which is The Scientist.
Oh, absolutely, man! It would be my pleasure. And is it okay if I take the lead on the scientist here?
Go for it.
So this song here is absolutely a gorgeous piece of work here. Like, like when you look at it realistically, for the majority of the track, it's basically Chris and the piano for like I would say 86.7% of the track. The only other parts that come in are towards the end with that guitar and like you get some drums too, but like the main elements are Chris, his words, his performance, and the piano. And the execution of all those elements are so good. It creates for a very classic track. Like I like within the context of this track here, we're going into another relationship based track, and just the my lyrical highlight off of here, I'm gonna throw out there is questions of science, science in progress, did not speak as loud as my heart. And when I analyze that line there, and I'm like, oh my goodness, so this is a guy within the context of this song here who's like over analyzing what led up to the breakup of his relationship, and he's trying to make sense of it, but he can't make sense of it because he just knows something went wrong, and he just wants to take everything back to the start. And like it's just so good, man, especially analyzing the concept of taking it back to the start. Like that is specifically found like in the chorus, and I love how that line specifically is used to end off the chorus. Like, oh, take me back to the start, and then you get into the next verse. Like that is so executed so well. Like I love it, man. Also, just the chorus within its own right, it's absolutely beautiful. Like iconic for a reason. You get the opening line, nobody said it was easy. It's such a shame for us to part. Like, yeah, on the surface, maybe borderline like generic heartbreak song, but the way that Chris is executing his performance and the context of the piano, and just how everything just works so flawlessly. It's a match made in heaven, for lack of a better descriptor there. Let's see, and just I love coming out of the chorus how the rest of the band just just comes in, almost like like a train continuing the story. Like it's just not overstating. Like the band's not coming in a very pronounced fashion. They're just sliding right back into the momentum of the track. So that's great. And yeah, I mean, I can go on for another like 15 to 20 minutes about how much I love the song. So yeah, I'm just gonna come out and finally say we've arrived at what I would consider to be the best song off the album, and also my favorite Coldplay song. Period. Scientist takes the cake.
I appreciate the fact that we both find our favorite Coldplay songs here on this album. You already mentioned that it is this track, The Scientist. I said it was in my place earlier. So the good news is that this is not my second least favorite track on the album, so you don't have to worry about that. The bad news is it's not my second favorite track either. This is one of the tracks I would say probably came the closest to being a number 3 track for me in my top 3. Because I agree with you wholeheartedly. The vocal performance is very good, and the way that the instruments build one on top of the other, you start with just the piano, then you get the bass, then get the guitar, then the drums kick in, and it just kind of builds and builds and builds until the very end. And the lyrics, like you say, are very good too, with, again, like you say, how it goes to going back to the start, and it just kind of feels like he's in this loop of trying to figure things out, scratch it, start all over, figure things out, scratch it, start all over. I did appreciate that. The thing that kept it out of my top 3, though, if I'm being completely honest, and I'm going to be, the outro's too long. I'm sorry. It's just the outro with because it felt like, again, the way it was building, I was expecting there to be this, mountaintop, this peak moment of realization, or this peak moment of songwriting or execution, and it just kind of vamps into this grand thing with Chris Martin going, ooh. It's not bad. I didn't hate it, but again, it was a moment where I was like, where's the big finish? Where's the big finale of this song? And it felt like a song that overstayed its welcome just a teeny bit too much. So I can't in good conscience mark this as a top song, but it came very, very, very close.
That's fair, man. You're entitled to your opinion. Your whole thing about wanting there to be some big payoff or some moment of clarity at the end of the track kind of reminded me, not a one for one comparison, but you were almost listening to the song almost like Marvin the Martian being like, where's the kaboom? There was supposed to be an earth-shattering kaboom.
That's a very good comparison. I never would have thought of that, but that's basically what it is. Just that wait for it, still waiting for it. I mean, this is nice, but waiting for it and just never comes, and it's just that little bit more. Honestly, if there was that big finish, it possibly could have crept up even into the top 2, but not quite. But still, I can understand why a lot of people like yourself love this song, because it is a very good song to listen to.
So, speaking of songs to listen to, that was an excellent segue. Are you ready to, boogie on over to the another big song off the LP here, with the next track being Clocks?
Yes, this I would say is probably the biggest song on the album, Clocks, because it's probably one of the more famous, one of the more ask somebody to name a Coldplay song, and this is what they respond with songs. And is the last of the big songs off this album as far as the singles. And this song just... we've talked about this before with varying artists, with varying albums. This is a warm bowl of soup. You just hear this song and you know what you're getting. It's comforting. It's powerful. Just first of all, that piano, 20 plus years later, still hits the way it did back in 2002. Just, that almost that hypnotic loop of da 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 da. Just a very nice take on the Pachelbel's Bell's canon chord progressions. And personally, I would say as far as singing goes, Chris Martin sounds best on this track compared to all others, because he sounds more joyous, I think. I'm not sure if he's actually more joyous or he's just singing a lot clearer and more powerful, because it feels like he has a much stronger command of the words that are coming out of his mouth. And the band just sounds really good too. The guitar is a little muted compared to the piano, but does a very nice job filling in the cracks. The drum part is a lot more intense than I remember it being. Like, it's not loud. It's not in my place loud. It's not when the levee breaks loud. It's not, Tom Sawyer loud, for an example. Like, the actual production of the drums is somewhat muted, but at the same time, it's no less intense because it feels like every note the drummer is doing something. Whether it's hitting the cymbal or hitting the bass drum, it seems like on 2 out of every 3 beats or 3 out of every 4. Like, it's a very intense part, but it's not very loud. It's very unique in that regard. The chorus is simple. It's 2 words. You are. And I love that. I love how very simplistic it is, because it is just, for as vague as Coldplay could be, and sometimes annoyingly so, this is probably the most vague set of lyrics that you could ever put on a chorus, and it works somehow very well. It's just, you are, and it leaves you to think about the rest. The bridge is really great. I love how the chord changes and everything sort of swells up to sort of a moment that we didn't quite get on The Scientist, and it comes back down with a piano and then just rides that groove on out. This song is just very, very, very good. And yeah, suffice to say, we have reached the other song in my top 2. Clocks is number 2 on that very short list.
And I can really dig that fact, man. I think the only thing that basically kind of kept this song here out of a top spot, if I could be honest with you, is I feel like the band kind of just rides the vibe just a bit too much. Like, I felt myself, I think it was like, midway through the track being like, okay, I get it. This piano lick, it's tight. Can we maybe add just like a little bit more spice? But again, like, obviously this track is not a bottom track in the grand scheme of things, because I don't have a bottom track in this review here. But yeah, a lot of things that you mentioned, I really do dig. And I'm just gonna elaborate on maybe a couple things here or there. The one thing that stood out to me in your discussion is I'm gonna start with the chorus, and you identified the chorus being incredibly vague, with the lyrics being "you are." And one thing that I caught that added new clarity or new appreciation for the chorus is you take a look how the first chorus goes and how the next verse begins with the lyric "confusion that never stops." So you are confusion that never stops. Like, I almost am willing to bet that Chris Martin wrote that set of lyrics intentionally, and I like that. And also, you think about like how the last chorus leads into the outro, and the outro, the first bar that you hear in that is home, home, where I wanted to go. Like, you are home, where I wanted to go, and I love that as well. And that's like almost kind of, maybe spoon-fed to you a little bit, considering in the outro you get in the background, you like the background you are, and that's complemented with the phrase home where I wanted to go. So yeah, I thought that was a neat lyrical trick, and I'm gonna tip my cap to Chris and his lyric writing there. And while I'm diving into the lyrics, I'm only going to address the context of the song as a whole. And this is basically Chris dealing with what it means to always deal with that human drive of always wanting to be better, always battle against stuff, and always wanting to conquer that next step, and never being able to be satisfied with whatever he's experiencing. Like, the first set of bars that you get in the whole track are: the lights go out and I can't be saved. Tides that I tried to swim against have brought me down upon my knees. And I really appreciated the whole lyrical context. So yeah, the lyrics are fine. I really did appreciate that. The piano lick is solid. I mean, yes, I have ears. I do appreciate the piano lick. I'm not a psychopath, I guess. So, and just the ability of the band to ride that groove, it's executed pretty well. And just also the key change that occurs at the bridge that you talked about. It sounds great. It does work very well. And also, one thing that I caught that I'm gonna shout out is the outro. I like what the guitar is doing to complement what the piano is doing with that. Like I thought, like the two were playing off of each other very well. So yeah, the only thing that holds this track here back from being like a top track and knocking my third favorite track out of contention, it's just like I just feel like the I wanted maybe just a little bit more. Like there was a spot where I just felt like the band was riding the groove and like Martin was like crooning and there wasn't really much going on. And I'm like, okay, maybe cut this section out or add maybe a little splash here with the guitar. I don't know. I dig the track though.
See, this is fascinating because I feel like, because again, I respect your opinion, but it definitely feels like your opinion of Clocks is very much my opinion of The Scientist, where it's like, great song, but, and that little but is the deciding factor between a top spot and a not top spot, which, again, we flip-flop between the two, but I think we can both agree that, to varying hierarchies, that Clocks, good song. Really good song.
Yeah, it definitely deserves all the accolades that it gets. Like in terms of like popular Coldplay songs, like it's a good song. If it's on the radio, if it comes on a playlist, I'm jamming out to it.
Yeah, yeah. Now, with that being said, moving on to the next track, if you're ready, Ryan, we will be discussing the song "Daylight."
Yeah, I'm totally ready. And if I'm like you said, Clocks was the last single off of this album, if I'm not mistaken, which I don't think I am. But yeah, Daylight here took me by surprise, and like it came right out of the gate with that interesting guitar sound and that guitar riff, and it like that kind of like the texture and the riff kind of gets stuck in your head. It's almost like a revving kind of sound, and I was able to dig what was going on there. And I do like what's occurring after that. The verses are solid. The bass, once again, is doing a great line. And I also like how, like, Chris's vocals sound here. Like, they're very menacing. And I like just a focus that he has here. And also, outside of that, the piano part in the verses, that is executed pretty well. So like the bass, the guitar, and Chris, they're all doing great parts, and the chorus in itself, it does do. It does do its job. The band mainly just grooves and Martin just croons with different bars. Nothing really much to write home about. But yeah, another thing that I want to highlight here is just how the repetition of the phrase slowly breaking into daylight and how that builds in the outro. Like, it lands so well in my ears. And this track really took me by surprise. On a lyrical context, like, Daylight is about the realization that you love someone. And I do like the use of light and dark and how you're breaking through into the daylight and you're breaking through the darkness to realize, oh, hey, I'm breaking through sadness, I'm breaking into love. And like how you can really feel that momentum popping out in the outro and how well that's executed. So yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to say about Daylight other than we've arrived at my third favorite track off the whole album. So yeah, Daylight completes my top three at number 3.
Wow. Wow. So that is a little surprising. But I can understand where you're coming from. One thing I will say out of the gate is that I do like how the chords that they chose for Daylight almost very much sounds like a rising sun. Like this is the kind of chords you would hear, first thing in the morning as the sun's rising, you're looking out the window, you're waking up and you're, embracing nature for what it is. So I did like that, especially considering we're coming off of Clocks, which definitely feels like a very at-night, moody type of song with its very heavy use of minor keys and, type of brain rushing and every type of mental thought running through your head process, trying to flip between so much thoughts, no thoughts, so much thoughts. And this feels like the morning after all that, where you're just like, I can breathe, I realize what's real, and we move on. According to Genius, this was seen as a sequel to Clocks, which musically I can get, lyrically maybe, because lyrically it does still seem very on the vague side. Like you said, this is about waking up and realizing you're in love, which again, compared to the confusion of the last few tracks, is very much a narratival progression of everything that's been going on, but it doesn't necessarily leap off that way. Like, this song was probably another one that I would put in the good song bucket, but not quite as high as The Scientist or a couple of ones that are coming up soon. But yeah, it's a solid track. It's a solid track. I dug how I also dug kind of how Chris Martin's vocals seem a little like double tracked, almost distorted with itself on the verses where he's singing and he's sort of singing as like almost like he just woke up. I kind of appreciated that effect too. But yeah, not quite enough to get into a top spot, but still a solid track for me.
Yeah, I can respect that. And like honestly, looking back on it, maybe like there's maybe a couple other tracks like within the rest of the album here that could have swapped out for that number 3 spot. But I think what really sold me on Daylight is the concept of how the lyrics were executed, the guitar sound, it was executed very well, and just the overall package was an instant highlight for me. And I always enjoy finding a deep cut throughout the record, throughout records that we review, man.
Agreed. Speaking of selling things or something equivalent to it, Ryan, I have a question for you.
What is that question?
How much wood could a woodchuck chuck? No. The real question is, if our listeners are listening to us on Hey, Listen to This, and they like what they are hearing, and they want to support what it is that they are hearing and the people who are doing the things that they are listening to, how can they do that? How can they support us?
So the main way that they can help support what we do on a week in and week out basis, basically at this stage in our project here, is, for lack of a better descriptor, show to the algorithm gods that the show matters. And the way that you do that is that you interact with it. Like, my main thing that I would say to the listeners is just take a second, scroll through our back catalog on that podcasting platform of choice that you're experiencing us on right now, and see what other episodes that we've done that we've covered albums that you are familiar with and you want to hear our opinions on, and do it, add it to a playlist, save it for later, or just enjoy other reviews that we've done, because we're creeping up on 100 individual album reviews on that front specifically. So yeah, that's a fun thing to think about. And also I can almost guarantee that we've done a record or an artist that you, the listener, are familiar with, because we've covered the gamut at this point. Then outside of that, within each of the individual episode, if the platform allows you to leave a comment on the episode about how you thought about what you think about the record, what do you think about the review that we did, go ahead, do that. If you're listening to us on the YouTubes, make sure you like the individual video that you're listening to us on, and whatever app you're listening to us on, make sure you subscribe, follow, and if that platform that you are on right now allows you to leave a positive review, please go ahead and do so, because that goes a long way in showing to the algorithm gods that we are worth some merit, because I would contend that we are worth a lot of merit within what we bring here on a week in, week out basis. And outside of audio formats, if you want to stay up to date about our episodes and help us get picked up by other algorithm gods, we have a Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. And not only do we post about new episodes there, but we also post about old episodes, and we also post articles about upcoming reviews and albums that are going to be talked about within those reviews on those social media platforms. And those social media platforms, we could be found by using the tagline ttheylisten. And one other tidbit: if you are out there listening to us right now and you want us to cover a specific artist or album that you don't see us have covered already, throw us an email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. Or even if you just have a general question, just shoot us an email. We'll be happy to answer any questions that are, sent our way. It doesn't have to be a whole review. It could just be like a tagline at the end of the episode. Yeah, I think that's a good wide gamut that the listeners out there can explore in terms of help supporting on what we do on a week in, week out basis.
I agree, and to those who have done so already, from the bottom of my heart and Brian's heart, I assume as well, we thank you for supporting us, sharing the word that we're out there and we're doing this, because again, we're not sponsored, we're not part of any major podcast network, we're just two guys who love talking about music and have done so for almost 100 episodes. Yeah, in fact, we're almost coming up on 2 years, if you can believe that. We're almost coming up on 2 years of doing these reviews, which is insane. But love the ride so far and don't want to stop it.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you, man. Especially considering all the other potential avenues that we can go down. But before we do so, we have to finish off this current avenue that we're experiencing. That is "A Rush of Blood to the Head" by Coldplay, and the next track is "Green Eyes." And Matt, you want to take the floor with this one here?
Yes, I will take the floor with Green Eyes. And once again, we get a nice sequential follow-up to the song before it. Clocks was the questioning of everything late at night. Daylight was the breaking and realizing, hey, maybe I do love someone after all. And that someone has green eyes. And this song very much comes across as a wedding song, almost in a sense. Because you have Chris Martin saying, honey, you're my rock, which I stand upon. And basically him saying, listen, you are the reason for living and you are my reason for life. It almost feels like it has a rockabilly feel to it. Like it's very driven by acoustic guitar and a very soft shuffle type of drum, which I thought was pretty cool. I did like that quite a bit. And it pretty much is, like I said, it's a solid love song in which he's basically professing that he loves this person with green eyes. Now, is this the person that he broke up with earlier in the album? Is this someone new? We don't know. The only thing we do know for a fact, it's not Gwyneth Paltrow, because once again we turn to Genius.com, where we learn that because it offended her, Chris Martin stopped playing this with Coldplay once those two started dating. And wow, that is a level of petty. That is a stank of petty that no designer candle can mask the fumes of. Like, my goodness. I get that you don't have green eyes, Gwyneth, but like, art is art, and you may not have been there for all of it, and you may not have inspired all of it, and acknowledge that there are other planets in the solar system aside from the world you live in by yourself. Like, that left a bad taste in my mouth. But this song itself did not. This song is a solid song, and yet another contender for that third spot on the list that didn't quite get there, because about 2/3 of the way through the song, I kind of forgot I was listening to it, which is never a good sign. Because for as nice and pleasant as the song is, it gets to the point of nice and pleasant that you just kind of like, you're vibing and you're not really listening to the song anymore. And then once you realize, there was like, oh yeah, the song. This is the song. Oh, it's over now. Okay, cool. So that sort of took it out of the running, but still quite a good song.
So it's interesting that you said, like, I don't want to say absent-minded trap that someone can follow in towards the back half of listening to this track here, and how that took it out of contention for being like a top song for you. I actually thought this other thing I'm about to mention would have taken it out of a top contention spot for you, and that's towards the end. Thanks to like how much you point this out, and maybe what would have been like more specifically with in regards to the Jelly Roll review that we did, and how like in that album, Jelly did do some over singing. I actually felt like Chris Martin was over singing towards the end of this track here, and it was something I picked up thanks to like your analysis of like a couple of the tracks that we talked about in the past. I'm like, oh, yeah. Like that almost put it into a bottom track kind of territory, because like it's one thing to miss notes and get pitchy if you go into like a falsetto kind of deal, like I described with Politik earlier in the review. It's another thing to be like almost like swallow the microphone when you're trying to sing a love song, and like it does become a bit nauseating towards the end, but outside of that, a couple of the reasons why this song here, like, does enough justice to, like, keep it out of a bottom track contention is a lot of the things that you mentioned. It's just a nice love song. Like, I just like how it starts out with Martin and an acoustic guitar. Like, that's a pretty solid notion. And I just like how Martin does sound whenever he gets into the chorus. And one element that I really did like was this song almost sounds like a western country western love song. It has like a western groove to it, and I did like that quite a bit. It kind of reminded me of Bright Eyes, weirdly enough. And just the one thing that really took me by surprise is just so at the beginning you get Martin and the acoustic guitar, but then the band coming in about during the halfway part took me by surprise. But I liked it quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, no real lyrical highlights here. I mean, it's a pretty standard love song, and you already covered the Gwyneth Paltrow angle, so I'm not even going to touch that bag of worms there. But yeah, Green Eyes is cool. I dig it. Maybe it's a track that on re-listen to with in the context of the album, I might actually skip due to the over singing. But yeah, it's not a bad track, honestly.
No, it's not. And it's kind of funny that you mentioned the fact that he was oversinging because, again, like halfway through, 2/3 through this song, I did like I kind of knew what the song was at that point. Soft, basic acoustic love song that I didn't even catch the oversinging at the end. I may have to go back and see if that's the case. But yeah, I think we pretty much painted our full picture of those green eyes. So I will throw it over to you for the next track, which is Warning Sign.
So, Warning Sign has a lot of potential coming right out of the gate. I mean, I did like the groove that established right at the start. Like, I thought that was really, really solid. And I love, like, the overall, like, spacey, dizzying effects, like the circling effects that were occurring with the guitar. I thought that was an excellent touch. And within the context of the song here, it's like maybe a take on the lyrical framework of The Scientist, where Chris is looking back on how the relationship, like, ended. Like, you get the very first verse being like, I missed the good part, then I realized I started looking in the bubble verse, I started looking for excuses. And, like, this is basically Chris admitting to the fact that, oh, he missed a good part about a relationship, and he was looking for, like, just, a warning sign on how, like, this relationship was not going to work out, like almost like an excuse for not to be happy. So I felt like that was a nice touch, and like there's a lot of also like nice elements here, like in the pre-chorus, like you get Chris saying, "I got to tell you what a state I'm in. I got to tell you in my loudest tones that I started looking for a warning sign." Now, dear listener, you're probably wondering why this track here could, like, you almost feel like there's a big but that's about to come into the picture here. And it's for the letdown that you get in the chorus, where you get Chris being like, when the truth is, I miss you. And not that the context of the lyrics are anemic in quality and value, but the way that it's executed, he completely misses the mark. And it's actually kind of pathetic, honestly. And not only within the context of the chorus, it's in the outro too, where you get Chris at a very soft level, but it still just sounds off, where he's saying, so I crawl back into your open arms. And I get what he's going for here. He misses his ex-lover, and how he basically blew up the relationship because he is afraid of being happy. But just the execution was pretty poor, quite honestly. So again, we found another track here for me that's a bit of a mixed bag, because there's enough good elements here within the context of it that hold it back from being a bottom track. But yeah, I'm not I'm not going to be ignorant of the fact that there was a lot of things, there's a few things here that held the track back for a good reason. So yeah, a warning sign. It's not a bad track. I would put it comparable to Green Eyes, but for different reasons.
This, I love how you described that chorus, because I don't hate that chorus, and but the way I heard it for the first time, my initial thought was, oh, this is what Coldplay sounds like to people who hate Coldplay, because it is maybe one of the simpiest moments in the history of music. Just to build for the, like you say, the thought process similar to the scientist, to come to this grand realization of, I miss you. The way he says it almost put this in my top 3, because it just seems so brazenly simpy. I just heard, I was like, wow. He nailed that. But to be honest, for as cathartically cynical as that is, I can't in good conscience put this in my number 3, because the rest of the track is fine. I like how the choruses stand out from the verses. And I do like how, like you say, you get that contrast of, I'm having all these thoughts, but really I only have one thought it all leads back to, which is a nice inverse from the scientist. But much like Green Eyes, once I kind of understood what this track was about, especially when it got to that chorus, I was like, okay, so this is a song about how he misses his lover. Cool. Awesome. And musically, it doesn't do anything. Lyrically, it doesn't do anything after that to make you be like, oh, but wait, there's more. Because there's not. There's nothing more. The song is basically, there were warning signs all along, but the truth is I miss you. Cool. End. Roll credits. So yeah, the band sounds good on this track. I did like the way the band sounded. I did like the piano. I did like the general power that they had on the chorus, but not enough, like you say, to lift it up into a top ranking spot. Even though, again, the just blunt simpiness of that chorus is just something to behold.
Yeah, I love the description that you threw out there. This is what Coldplay sounds like to people who hate Coldplay. And it's not even a
it
YouTube,
is
Coldplay shreds kind of thing. Oh my goodness, you hit the nail right on the head, man.
Thank you. I heard that the first time. I was like, oh, you poor things. You're going. And again, I can't in good conscience say that's a good move, but it was such a blatant move that I was like, oh, that's so biting and it works so well. But yeah, if you're cool with it, ready to move on to the next track, which is A Whisper.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. So A Whisper. Yeah, I'm gonna let you take the lead on this, because I want to hear your thoughts before I give my thoughts.
Gladly. So this track, we go from the softness of Green Eyes and the sort of typical Coldplay sound of power pop with warning sign to a track that is much more frantic in nature, because you get the band doing this frantic waltz type of beat, and then you get the vocals that kick in with, there's a whisper, a whisper, a whisper, a whisper, and it wasn't until a few years later that these comparisons started coming out, but there were points in their career where Coldplay was accused of somewhat sounding like or copying the style of another British band from the 90s that we have not mentioned yet, one of your favorites, Ryan, and that is Radiohead. I never really got those comparisons until this track, because I have not heard a Coldplay song, or really any song for that matter, I could think of, that blatantly feels like a Radiohead song not by Radiohead like this one. Now, is there anything intrinsically wrong with sounding like Radiohead, even if you're not Radiohead? No, there's not. But, that being said, in order to sound good, what you need is good mixing, and what you need is good balance of vocals and instruments. A Whisper does not have that, because at the start, it all just sounds like... How do I say this? The vocals get buried into the instrument mix, because the instrument mix is basically meant to be very powerful and dissonant and almost like you're in the middle of a bad dream. And I think that's what this track was trying to do. It was trying to create this instrumental plus vocal combination to create a song that sounds like you're having doubts, you're having a bad dream, you're having a moment of uncertainty amidst all of the certainty you were just dealing with. Now something's coming in to mess with that, and it's messing you up. And I think that was the point behind the mix, to make it seem very chaotic and problematic. But just because they executed that to a point where I understood what they were doing doesn't mean that I like it, because I think this song kind of sucks. Because, again, the vocals are barely there, and even when you do get that lift into the chorus where the band seems to be playing a little harder, it still just sounds very muddied and mixed and chaotic in ways that aren't pleasant. And also, I think that for as much as they're trying to cop Radiohead, they're doing it in the most basic way. Like, Radiohead would, mess with time signatures and, different beats and different instruments. Here, they're just kind of like just doing a basic 3-beat, but double time. So instead of 1, 2, 3, they're 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. And I wasn't super impressed by that. It didn't sound bad, but again, the mix is what really brought this track down for me. And we have arrived at the other bottom track for me, my second least favorite track on the album, which is A Whisper.
Yeah, I kind of figured that this was going to be a bottom track for you, because like how you initially just started the discussion here, man. I was just like, yeah, let me pencil this in as a bottom track for Matt here, because you didn't bury the lead, my friend, and I can respect that. And it's interesting that you brought up the Radiohead comparison, because I knew that Coldplay have been accused of biting Radiohead's style in the past, but I didn't really connect the dots here, specifically with this song here. And I can really get what you're going at here. So yeah, so despite your reservations about A Whisper, and I think I might go back into the track and, check it out to see if I can pick up what you're laying down in terms of the mix and how, like, muddy it is, and just how, like, how it's not just everything that you basically just described. Because, like, I think, like, the only critiques I really have about this track here is found in the second verse. Like, it's just, there's not really much to latch onto, and it's just they ride that groove of, like, oh, a whisper, like that oscillating beat, and like that, the focus on that oscillating offbeat that that's found throughout the track here. It's nice, and I do like that, and I feel like just due to the song's length, I don't mind it nearly as much as like whenever I got bored of Clocks about like halfway through and how they were writing that piano look there. So yeah, maybe that was a factor, and also maybe the Radiohead comparison. Maybe appreciate Whisper, maybe just a bit more. But yeah, I mean, I really don't have much else to say other than yeah, this song here is specifically is mainly just grooves and vibes for me. And if I maybe want to give a lyrical highlight here and like a nod to uh, the song here, I do like. And this might be a little bit of a stretch, only because they mentioned the word clocks here, but yeah, kind of like the callback to the single clock, the track clocks here. In the verse, you get the bar, and I hear the sound of ticking clocks. Yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. Maybe like a through line on a narrative sense between that song and this song, but that might be a bit of a stretch. But yeah, a whisper, it's fine, man. It's gonna go into an album track territory for me.
That's fair. And I would probably say if the mixing was a little better, I'd probably put it in the same category. Because, like you say, I did like that parallel, especially now that we're discussing, I probably like a little more the parallel to Clocks because, again, the last couple tracks after Clocks feel a bit more clear and with clarity, as opposed to Clocks, which was basically the, witching hour and the wondering of all that is and all that is to be. Here you sort of be like, hey, remember those thoughts of doubt? Well, they're back. But again, the mix just sank it, and I couldn't give it a pass. So yeah. If you're ready, Ryan, I am cool with pivoting on over to not just the penultimate track on A Rush of Blood to the Head, but a title track for this album.
Oh yeah, and yeah, I'll take the lead on this one. So the overall structure of this song here, it's really cool, man. And catch me on a different day. This track here could be a top track for me. Maybe it could swap out with Daylight, and it's for a couple different reasons. Like, in terms of on a lyrical focus and a theme focus here, you get Chris, essentially going to a climactic point in terms of the album's themes, with him wanting to buy this place so he can burn it down and watch the orange glow, and like this place in question is his past and all things that have led to a relationship. And yeah, I felt like that structure, that concept was pretty cool, and like how like he repeats the concept of I'm gonna buy this place and burn it down. I'm gonna buy this place and watch it fall. I'm gonna buy this place and start a fire. I'm gonna buy this place and see it burn. I thought like that was really cool, clever lyric songwriting. So I thought that was pretty cool. And other than the lyrical front, the chorus is pretty good. Martin's vocals have a decent edge to them, and I just like how the instruments don't really do much different compared to like the verses, but they just get a heightened intensity. I mean, that might come off as a pretty basic analysis of chorus because like that's basically a chorus in its own right, but I digress. So, and I do like how the outro is established with how the band's just riding a groove, and Martin's asking like the listener to meet him at a couple of different places, and like the not so much the listener, but like the significant other is asked to meet him, meet me by the bridge, meet me by the lane, meet me on the road, meet me where I said, blame it all upon a rush of blood to the head, and like that phrase there, a rush of blood to the head, like it's again Martin falling on like maybe like an excuse for his impulsive behavior, his lack of emotional intelligence, and basically saying like, you know what, I can't be held I I feel like I don't want to be held accountable for my actions because I'm just stupid and I'm human and I just make dumb mistakes because, like, I just get excited. So I thought that was clever. Maybe, like, on another day, again, like, this track here could easily be a top three because the overall structure of it is really cool and I did like it a lot. But I'm going to stick to my guns. A Rush of the Blood to the Head. If I had to give this album a top four, this would be a number four.
This was another track that, once again, competing with a lot of others that could have been a top three track for me as well. And it came very close. It just didn't quite do enough for me for one reason or another. Again, the biggest issue, again, I think with a lot of songs on this album for me is that once you get the first verse and the chorus, you basically know the whole story of the song. Like it's not a Bohemian Rhapsody, it's not a Stairway to Heaven, it's not a Layla. It's not even a The Last Time I Saw Richard, for example, from Joni Mitchell's Blue. Like, here you get your first verse, you get your chorus, and you get a couple elements, like you say, with Meet Me Down at the River, or Meet Me by the Bridge later on. I did like the fact that the lyrics were as biting as they were, and as very dark as they were, because a lot of, especially compared to, I miss you, the power of hearing him say, I'm going to buy this place so I can burn it down and watch the flames. Like, it being as low and as dark and as brooding as it is, when he does hit that higher register towards the chorus, it creates a really nice contrast. So that I thought was really nice. And I won't go too much more into the lyrics that you haven't already mentioned, because it does portray this idea of him just saying, listen, this is who I am. Maybe it's all part of the plan. Maybe it's just a rush of blood to the head, which, by the way, I may argue is a double entendre, because a rush of blood to what head, shall we say? But aside from that, because, guys are dudes and dudes can be guys as well. But yeah, A Rush of Blood to the Head, I thought was a very good track, and much like you, Catch Me on a Different Day, and it could have crept to that top three as well.
So, are you ready to close out this review with the final track off of A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay, with the final track being Amsterdam?
Yes, time to take a trip over to Amsterdam, and right out of the gate, you get this piano from Chris Martin, which just sounds very, very good. Like, it is a nice, I wouldn't go as far as calling it end credits piano, but it's close. Maybe it's just because the final track didn't feel as creditsy, but that's aside the point. And you get more thoughts of somewhat similar nature to A Rush of Blood to the Head, but a little softer, where the power of realizing where he's at with Warning Sign and missing someone and trying to burn down his past with A Rush of Blood to the Head. Now he's focusing on the future. Now he's saying, listen, I'm at this precipice where I could go one way or the other, but whatever it is, I'm going to go there with you. I will meet you at this place and we can go somewhere from there. A very resolution type of track. I will say, if this had a bit more build like The Scientist, it easily could have cracked my top three as well. But it's structured very weirdly. Like, it starts with, him and the piano. Then you get almost this, like, gospel type of backing vocals about halfway through. And then it builds to that it sort of plateaus back down to just some piano. And then you get that rock part at the very end that just sort of, like, bang out of nowhere. And you're just like, oh, we're rocking now. And we're still going. It's been 3 minutes. But aside from that, the lyrics are good. And I do like how Martin is pretty much hitting every note proper. So yeah, I thought this is a really, really nice way to close out the album. And I read that this was not about an alleged unaliving attempt by Martin, because a lot of people were saying, "Oh, is this about?" No, it's not about that, and I'm willing to take him at his word, because while you could do a song like that and you could make a song about that, you maybe consider a couple songs on this album parry to that, even this one. It's not biting enough, it's not self-critique enough, it's not to the edge enough to be considered that. And that's the only real major critique I have about this track, which is my critique about most of the songs of the album. It's like, if it had a little bit more oomph or a little bit more spice, as you say, it very much could have been a very standout-y track, but doesn't quite get there. But it's very nice, and I'm glad it closes out the album like it does.
I get how some people might think that this is about a unaliving attempt, especially with how the outro is structured, with lyrics about stood on a bridge, tied to a noose, sick to the stomach, and preceding those set of lyrics are I'm on my way back down again, and earlier in God put a smile upon your face, he's talking about going down to hell, you can draw the comparison here. One thing I will say, though, in your lyrical analysis, I would maybe counteract your dissection of it with my own dissection, and it's mainly for the fact that I felt like this song is basically Chris coming to the realization that prior to admitting that love is the way to save yourself, and love is the way for him to save himself. You get bars literally throughout the majority of this track here where you get him basically saying hey, my life is out of control, my star is fading, I swerve out of control, I swear I waited and waiting, I've got to get out of this hole. Basically admitting throughout several examples that he's tried to live life, but he can't get out of his own way. And throughout several examples throughout this whole LP, you get definite, clear examples of him blaming other things instead of it taking accountability for his own actions. So I appreciate that, and I also appreciate how the song ends with him talking about stood on the edge, tied to the noose, and you came along and you cut me loose. Basically saying hey, this person came into his life, saved him from his own demise. I felt like that was nice. It was a nice way to end up the album. And for those of you who are wondering why this track here is called Amsterdam, well, it was written while the band was in Amsterdam. No other meaning other than that. So, yeah. I will say, at certain points in the track, Martin does get pitchy with the whole falsetto business again and again. That takes away from the experience of the track. And this could have been a top track for me, honestly, if it wasn't for the pitchiness that I found throughout the basically after the first leg of it. I will say, though, that outside of the pitchiness, I do dig the pulling effect that you get with the vocals and how they just work within the sonic texture within the song. So I felt like that was executed well. Backing vocals are a great touch. And the band coming in with that gospel sound that you mentioned around the 3/4 mark was awesome. I was totally not expecting that, and it added a whole new element for me. Yeah, I mean, this song here had all the potential to maybe be a third favorite song, but again, there's a couple things here or there that just kind of hold it back from sticking the landing for one reason or another.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I don't think we held back. I think we did stick the landing, and for those of you who are holding your unofficial hey, listen to the scorecards, you'll know that we have 11 tracks up, 11 tracks down, top spots and bottom slots filled. No dirty thoughts there. And with that in mind, we could say those three magic words to put this review into cruise control towards the end of our destination.
We did it.
We did it, man. We got involved with some Coldplay and took a bit of a rush of blood to the head and discovered what the sound of post Britpop could be, is. I don't know. I will go first in my full analysis of this album. And wow, this is an interesting album to introduce. Well, not fully introduce, but dig into involving Coldplay because, like I said with that part on the warning sign, there are moments on this album where Coldplay sounds like a band that earned its infamy during the mid 2000s for being, you know, softies and just a little too pleasant for their own good. And a lot of times throughout this album, I kept thinking, okay, they got the basic idea down, but they're not really moving past the basic idea, especially when it comes to some of the lyrics on some of the tracks, like Green Eyes, like Warning Sign, like A Whisper. Really, the whole back half, if we're being honest, with the exception of A Rush of Blood to the Head and maybe Amsterdam. On the other hand, sometimes the basicness comes shining through, like on Clocks or In My Place. And then just sometimes it's completely tasteless, like it is with Politik. And that seems to be, again, Coldplay's MO is to have these strong feelings and these feelings of heartfeltness, but not to the point where it's bleeding out onto the page like an Against Me, like a Joni Mitchell, etc. But that all being said, I'm not going to thrash the band too hard because musically there really isn't too many bad moments on this album at all. A Whisper, that's just a mixing problem. You take that away, and this album pretty much sounds pleasant front to back. You know, the playing is good. It's executed very well. The piano sounds good. I think Chris Martin's vocals, for the most part, sound fine front to back. So, all that to say, this album suffers the most in the fact that its biggest songs are its best songs, and its other songs, kind of like the Joey Rowe episode, don't do a whole lot to elevate this enjoyability of this album as a whole. But it's still an enjoyable album at its base level, which again feels like the target in the first place. So I'm going to give A Rush of Blood to the Head a solid 7 out of 10.
So for me, for this being like the only other album that I've dove into pretty thoroughly, other than Viva La Vida and all, and hold on. So for me, with this being one of the only other albums from Coldplay that I've dove into within their discography, like I would say that this is a pretty solid album. Like if someone were to be like, "Hey, Ryan Kearns, I hear that you know a thing or two about music and you've experienced the Coldplay once or twice. Like, what record would you recommend?" I would be like, "Well, hey, check out A Rush of Blood to the Head, and if you like what's going on in there, expand out, choose your own adventure from there." So, like, I feel like it's a solid introduction there. It's a pleasant record that I did enjoy. But I would say full-heartedly, would I go back to this record for multiple listens? Am I going to pick it up on vinyl? Am I going to seek it out specifically when I'm turning back to this band? I'm going to be honest with you. Not really. And that's no diss to this record here. I'm always going to love songs like The Scientist. It's always going to hold a special place in my heart in terms of, like, what Coldplay can offer. And honestly, songs like God Put a Smile Upon Your Face and A Rush of Blood to the Head and Daylight. Those songs are really cool. I really respect what's going on there. But, yeah, the rest of the album is mixed with solid lyrical themes and good instrumentation. But, yeah, nothing much within those songs really take it over the edge. And, like, I don't really have a mind-altering song that really can lift this album's rating into like a new territory. So, much like you, I too am rating this album a solid 7 out of 10.
Well, that makes our job on the calculator very easily. Your 7 out of 10, my 7 out of 10, averaging out to a 7 out of 10. Because
Math.
math works, everybody. Basic math for a basic sounding album. And my next album recommendation, I'm going to defer to you what I was going to choose because I think I know what your next album recommendation is going to be. Because it was going to be my next one too. Because there's two albums I thought about. One very obvious choice and one not so obvious choice. I'm going to go with the not so obvious choice. And this is a band that not only have we listened to before, this is well, not on the show. We may at one point. But we have seen this band live, and not only that, I have opened up for this band with my own band thanks to you. And that band is New Jersey's own Their Planes Will Block Out the Sun and their album entitled White Dancer. Because much like that album, there are a lot of very atmospheric elements to that album that parallel this. The vocal styles very much seem inspired by Coldplay and or Radiohead, and the softer moments like the closing track echo what is going on this album here by Coldplay. So White Dancer by Their Planes Will Block Out the Sun is my next album recommendation based off of A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay.
Excellent record. I recommend anybody listening to this episode right now, please go check out that record. And if you like what that band brought together with that record, please support it by any means necessary. And I also thank you for leaving the door wide open for me to make my next album recommendation pretty easy. I actually had two just in case, but I appreciate the notion, and I will take the lead on that one. So my next album recommendation is Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends, their 2008 record, which I would consider to be peak Coldplay. You get obviously the title track Viva La Vida, one of their most iconic songs off their whole discography. Also, songs like Violent Heel are cool, Strawberry Swing, Lovers in Japan. I think I literally named like half the album there. So yeah, Viva La Vida and Death and All of His Friends it's a good place to check out Coldplay going from there. So yeah, man.
So, dear listener, if you have not listened to Viva La Vida or Death and All His Friends by Coldplay or White Dancer by Their Planes Will Block Out the Sun, those are our next two recommendations based off of A Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay. And that is an album that we both have given a 7 out of 10. So, what a discussion. Honestly, I thought this was going to be a harder episode simply because of the relatively baseline nature of Coldplay's execution, especially on the lyrical front. But I think we found a decent bit to talk about throughout this review.
Yeah, and I think we both, as evidenced by our scores being the same, we both walked away with this is a good album. Is it a great album? No. But good album nonetheless, man.
Yeah, I'm fully right there with you. So one final piece of business to get to before we put a bow on this album, wrap it up, and kick it into bed. And that is you, Ryan. We are heading into what I believe will be chapter 3 of 11 in your extended mini-series of whatever it is that you are about to dish. What is chapter 3?
So, chapter 3... I'm going to set the scene here specifically. And for those of you who are like, wait, what is chapter 3? This is the first time I'm listening to an episode of Hey, Listen to This. So, a couple of episodes ago, I threw the challenge out to myself that I wanted to choose within the context of the next 11 reviews that are basically up for my discretion of direction of where we're going to go. I wanted to choose older albums, and what I mean by older albums pre-2000. So the year would have to begin with the numbers 1 and 9, 19 something. And the only exception I'm going to make is for our 100th episode, and I have something fun cooked up for that. But when we get to that, we will get to that. But for next week's review, the way that I basically structured the majority of the rest of this fun journey that I'm taking me and Matt down is that I looked up what were considered to be really impactful years for music. And I made a pivot out of my plans due to the unfortunate passing of Ozzy Osbourne. And I was going to include a Black Sabbath album within the context of the years that I was going to be talking about. That year was going to be 1971 with their album Master of Reality. But as we alluded to at the start of this review, we already talked about Black Sabbath. So 1971, that year is already covered. Kinda, I guess. I'm just going to pivot on to what I'm going to lay out the table here for you. So the next year that I had up for discussion here, and I chose two albums from, was the year 1980. Ironically enough, 10 years after Paranoid by Black Sabbath, when that album was released. So the year we're going to be covering is 1980. And the way I'm going to have you choose between the two albums that we're going to be discussing is that I'm going to have you choose a band that has cited the specific artist that has done these albums as an inspiration for the work that they have done or they do today. Are you ready?
I am ready.
So I'm going to have you pick between The Killers or Nirvana.
The Killers or Nirvana, 1980. And they're both bands we've covered before, too. We've covered both Nirvana and The Killers, with both In Utero and Hot Fuss. Check those episodes out while I vamp. Just because I'm a little more curious, let's go with The Killers.
So, you want to know something funny, man?
What's that?
For another week in a row, we are going to be staying in the UK. We're going to be talking about an English rock band. So
3 weeks in 3 weeks in a row, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, fun stuff, man. That's fun. When I had this album up for contention, I'm like, yeah, I wonder if he's gonna choose that. So yeah, the album that we're gonna be talking about, it's an album from a band called Joy Division, and the album specifically is Closer, which was their second and final studio album.
Oh, okay. I am excited to listen to this album, but not giving away any spoilers. It's probably going to be a very dark intro next week, just throwing that one out there.
Yeah. And for those of you who are listening right now, you can listen to next week's episode, but, also, do a Google and figure out what we're talking about in the context of Joy Division and this album here specifically. But in the meantime, man, this was a fun review. I'm really excited that we were able to do it, everything considering.
I am too. I'm glad we were able to flesh out our thoughts about this album because, again, memes be damned, Coldplay is still part of American culture, despite being from the UK. They still got great songs, some of them we've talked about here on this album, and that's pretty much all I have to say. You got anything else?
Yeah, it was such a good review, and I had such a good time. I mean, take me back to the start.